The dust cloud rose like a golden shroud against the dying light of late summer. 1878. Eleanor Hart gripped the reins tighter as their wagon jolted over another rut in the Dakota Territory Trail. Beside her, 12-year-old Cal winced, cradling his arm against his chest. "Just a bit further to Cotton Ford," she murmured, though the words tasted like lies. She'd been saying that for 3 hours now, ever since they'd separated from the main wagon train at Willow Creek. Cal's forehead burned beneath her palm when she checked him again. The fever had started 2 days ago, right after his fall from the wagon when the wheel caught that hidden gully. His right arm hung useless, swollen and angry beneath the makeshift sling she'd fashioned from her petticoat. "Ellie," his voice came weak, younger than his years. "My head feels like it's full of cotton." "I know, sweetheart. We'll find a doctor soon." Another lie. Cotton Ford might have a barber who pulled teeth on Sundays, if they were lucky. The oxen slowed without her command, their heads swaying. Even the beasts sensed something wrong with this stretch of trail too quiet. No bird song, just the whisper of buffalo grass bending before an evening wind that carried the faint scent of sage. Then she saw it, a flash of movement in the cottonwoods ahead where the trail curved toward Cheyenne River. Her late husband Henry's voice echoed in her memory. "When the prairie goes silent, Ellie, you best go silent with it." She reached for the Springfield rifle wedged between the seat boards, her movements careful, deliberate. But before her fingers found purchase, the world exploded into chaos. 3 riders burst from the tree line, bandanas pulled high, dust devils spinning in their wake. The lead man fired into the air, spooking the oxen into a stumbling halt. Well, what have we here?" The voice came muffled through fabric, but the eyes above cold gray like winter steel held no warmth. "Lady, traveling alone with a boy, that's mighty careless in these parts." "We have nothing of value," Eleanor said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Just homesteading supplies and—" "We'll be the judge of that." The second rider, smaller, wiry, had already dismounted and approached the wagon bed. "Check the false bottom. Tate, these settlers always think they're clever." Cal whimpered as the wagon rocked with the man searching. Eleanor's hand inched toward the rifle again. "I wouldn't." The leader cocked his revolver, aimed not at her but at Cal. "Boy looks poorly already. Shame if he got worse." Hot rage flooded through her, but Eleanor froze. These weren't ordinary bandits, too organized, too specific in their searching. They knew exactly what they were looking for. The searcher, Tate, emerged with Henry's wooden cash box, the one she'd hidden beneath the cornmeal sacks. "Got it. Vance." "Vance," she filed the name away, though fat good it would do her if they didn't survive this. "Traveling money," the leader, Vance, whistled low. "Must be $300 here. Widow's pension goes far these days." "That's for buying seed and—" Eleanor bit off her words. "Never tell them your plans. Never let them know you'll be alone on a homestead." "Was for buying seed." Vance pocketed the cash, then nodded to his men. "Take one of the oxen. Leave him the lame one." "You can't." The words tore from her throat. "We'll die out here. My brother's sick." "Not my problem." But as Vance turned his horse, something made him pause. He studied Cal's flushed face, the boy's labored breathing. "Sooner than later, by the look of him, maybe we're doing you a kindness." They were gone in minutes, taking the stronger ox and most of their supplies. Eleanor sat frozen until the sound of hoofbeats faded, then scrambled down to check Cal. His fever had spiked, skin hot and dry. The fall, the stress, the dust, everything conspiring against them. The remaining ox, an old beast named Moses, stood patient despite his lameness, but he couldn't pull the wagon alone, not fully loaded. Eleanor unhitched him, fashioned a travois from wagon boards and rope. It would have to do. She loaded Cal onto the makeshift carrier with their remaining water and Henry's rifle, everything else her mother's rocking chair. The good iron stove, the trunk of wedding linens she'd have to abandon. Come on, Moses. She took the lead rope, began walking. Cotton Ford might be 10 miles, might be 20, but stopping meant death. The sun sank like a red stone into the grassland. Twilight painted everything purple and gray, making distances impossible to judge. Cal moaned with each bump of the travois. Moses limped steadier than she'd expected, but how long before the old ox gave out? Then, like a spirit forming from shadow, a rider appeared on the ridgeline. Eleanor's heart hammered. She reached for the rifle. Though what good would it do one woman, one sick boy, one lame ox against whoever this was? The rider approached slowly, hands visible. As he drew closer, she saw he was native Lakota, by the beadwork on his vest and the way he wore his hair in 2 long braids wrapped in fur. Her grip on the rifle tightened. The newspapers were full of stories about hostiles and renegades, though Henry had always said you couldn't believe half what city papers printed. The man stopped 20 feet away, dismounted. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with a face carved by wind and sun, but his eyes dark, watchful, held something she didn't expect, concern. Your boy is sick. Not a question. His English came accented but clear. Please! Eleanor hated the desperation in her voice. We were robbed. I need to get him to town. Cotton Ford is 15 miles. He will not make it. The man stepped closer, hands still empty, moving like he approached a spooked horse. The fever from injury. She nodded, words stuck in her throat as the stranger knelt beside the travois. Cal's eyes fluttered open, focused with effort. His arm, she found her voice. Broken 2 days ago. Now fever. May I? He waited for permission before touching Cal's forehead, examining the swollen arm with surprisingly gentle fingers. The bone must be set properly. The fever. He looked up at her. I know medicines. Plant medicines. There is a sheltered place near the river, not far. Every story she'd ever heard warred in Eleanor's mind. Trust a Lakota warrior. Follow him into the wilderness with her sick brother. But Cal's breathing grew more labored with each moment. And this man's eyes. What's your name? She asked. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The whites call me Hawk. Easier for them than Thunkadzi. He stood, fluid as water. Your boy needs help now. Decide. Moses chose that moment to buckle slightly, favoring his lame leg more heavily, as if the universe itself conspired to leave her no choice. Can you truly help him? I can try. Better chance than reaching town. He moved to Moses, checking the ox's leg with the same gentle expertise. Your animal also needs rest. Come. And because sometimes survival meant trusting the unlikely, Eleanor Hart followed a Lakota warrior into the gathering darkness of the Dakota Territory. The camp appeared like something from a dream, a cluster of canvas and hide shelters tucked into a grove of cottonwoods where a creek fed into the Greater Cheyenne. A small fire glowed like a fallen star, and the air smelled of wood smoke and something herbal, sweet. 2 other Lakota men emerged from shadows, speaking rapidly in their tongue. Eleanor caught Cal's name, the universal sound of concern crossing language barriers. Hawk responded calmly, gesturing to the travois. Within minutes, Cal lay on a bed of buffalo robes inside a brush shelter. Hawk worked with practiced efficiency, setting the broken bone while Cal was semi-conscious from fever, binding it with peeled willow bark and rawhide that would shrink tight as it dried. His grandmother, he explained, had taught him the healing ways before soldiers came to the reservation schools. Eleanor held Cal's good hand while Hawk prepared medicine willow bark tea for fever, a poultice of prairie plants she couldn't identify. The other men brought water, tended Moses, offered her dried meat and flatbread she was too worried to eat. Why help us? She asked when Cal finally slept, his breathing easier. Hawk sat back on his heels, considering. 3 riders passed this way earlier. Heading toward the rail depot with an ox that walks sound and strong, your ox walks lame. He shrugged. The math is simple. You could have taken what little we have left. Could have. He fed another stick to the small fire. My father taught that how we treat strangers in need shows who we are. Besides, that ghost smile again. Your boy reminds me of my youngest brother. Same stubborn chin. Through the night, they kept vigil. Hawk changed the poultices, fed Cal sips of medicine tea. Eleanor dozed fitfully, startling awake each time Cal stirred. Once she woke to find Hawk placing something in Cal's good hand, a string of blue trade beads. For peaceful dreams, he explained. My grandmother said blue calls the calm spirits. By dawn, Cal's fever had broken. He woke clear-eyed, staring in wonder at the shelter, at Hawk, at the beads wrapped around his fingers. Ellie, where? Hush, we're safe. She smoothed his hair, feeling the cool dampness of healthy sweat. This is Hawk. He helped you. Cal studied the Lakota man with 12-year-old directness. You're Indian. Cal, but Hawk chuckled. Yes, you're white. And does it hurt setting bones? Sometimes, but healing hurts less than staying broken. Something passed between them, understanding. Maybe, or the beginning of trust. Cal relaxed into the buffalo robes, fingering the blue beads. As morning painted the cottonwoods gold, Hawk's companions brought Moses, repacked with what Eleanor had abandoned. Retrieved from where she'd left the wagon, the ox seemed renewed, his limp barely noticeable. Mint and bee balm on his leg. Hawk explained. He is old but has miles left. Eleanor's throat tightened. I don't know how to thank. No thanks needed, but his expression turned serious. Those men who robbed you, I know their kind. They will not stop with one wagon. You think they're targeting settlers? I think someone tells them which wagons to hit. Someone who knows when people carry cash. He helped her secure Cal in a proper travois, one his companions had built at first light. Be careful in Cotton Ford. Not everyone there wishes newcomers well. The warning settled like ice in her stomach. But with Cal alive and improving, with Moses ready to travel, she had no choice but forward. As they prepared to leave, Hawk pressed a small leather pouch into her hands. More medicine? Change the poultice tonight and tomorrow. Their fingers brushed in the exchange. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks, foolish, given everything, but his touch felt like a promise, somehow, of what she couldn't say. Will we? She stopped, uncertain what she was asking. I scout this area often. He stepped back, formal now, with his companions watching. If you need help, leave a white cloth tied to the fence post where the mission road meets the main trail. I will see it. Then they were going their separate ways, Hawk and his companions melting back into the grassland like smoke, Eleanor leading Moses toward a town that might not welcome them, carrying medicine from hands that weren't supposed to heal whites, wearing kindness from people the newspapers called savage. Cal dozed on the travois, the blue beads still wrapped in his fist, and Eleanor Hart, widow, sister, survivor, walked toward Cotton Ford with her mind full of dark eyes and gentle hands, wondering if accepting help from a Lakota warrior had saved them or marked them for a different kind of trouble altogether. Behind them, the smoke from the camp's morning fire rose like a blue ribbon into the prairie sky, carrying prayers in languages both ancient and eternal. And somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled on the thermals, watching over trails visible and invisible, where destiny wore beadwork and spoke with an accent of earth and honesty. The dust of their passage settled slowly in the morning light, but other things trust. Hope. The first stirring of something unnamed, those would take much longer to find their rest. Cotton Ford squatted on the prairie like a collection of broken teeth-weathered storefronts, false-fronted buildings trying to look grander than their rough-sawn reality. Eleanor led Moses down Main Street, acutely aware of every curtain that twitched, every conversation that died as they passed. The townspeople stared openly. A woman alone, dusty and trail-worn, leading a lame ox with a boy on a travois. She might as well have been a circus act. But it was the travois itself that drew the longest looks. Indian-made, clearly, with its distinctive weaving and the decorative beadwork along the sides. Doc Henley's at the end of the street, called a woman from the mercantile doorway. May Collins, according to the sign, a handsome widow who ran the town's boarding house and restaurant. Her voice held kindness, but her eyes asked questions Eleanor wasn't ready to answer. The doctor's office occupied the ground floor of a narrow building that leaned slightly, as if exhausted by prairie wind. Eleanor tied Moses to the hitching post and helped Cal inside. The blue beads still wound around his fingers like a talisman. Doc Henley proved to be younger than expected, with the soft look of an Eastern education not yet worn away by frontier hardship. His eyebrows rose at Cal's professionally set splint. Who did this work? He unwrapped the binding carefully, whistled low. This is exceptional. The bone's been set perfectly. A friend helped us on the trail. Eleanor kept her voice neutral. Must be quite a friend. This is better than what they taught at Pennsylvania Medical College. He rewrapped the arm, checked Cal's temperature, examined the fading bruises from the poultice. Your boy's lucky. Another day without treatment. He didn't finish. Cal, more alert now, piped up. Hawk fixed it. He gave me these. He held up the beads. The change in the doctor's expression was subtle but unmistakable. Hawk, I see. Is there a problem? Eleanor's spine stiffened. No, just well. You'll find Cottonford has strong opinions about fraternizing with the natives, especially after the recent cattle troubles. Cattle troubles. Rustling? 3 ranches hit this month. Course, everyone blames the Lakota, though there's no proof. He turned to wash his hands in the basin. Deputy Kettering's been especially vocal about Indian involvement. That name one of the bandits had called their leader Vance. Vance Kettering. Eleanor filed this away. Your brother needs rest and regular meals. The break will heal clean, thanks to that initial treatment. Doc Henley's voice carried warning beneath professional courtesy. May Collins runs a respectable boarding house. Might be she has work available. If you're planning to stay. Outside. Eleanor found a small crowd gathered around Moses and the travois. A thick-set man with a deputy's badge stood at the center, examining the Indian handiwork with theatrical disgust. Well, looks like someone's been making friends on the prairie. His voice boomed for the crowd's benefit. Deputy Vance Kettering. She recognized those cold gray eyes even without the bandana. Her heart hammered, but she kept her face carefully blank. My brother was injured. Some travelers helped us. Truth and lie twisted together. Travelers. Kettering spat tobacco juice dangerously close to her skirts. That what we're calling them now next, you'll be inviting them to Sunday service. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Eleanor felt their judgment pressing in like heat. Last I heard, Christian Charity didn't check bloodlines, she said quietly. The laughter died. Kettering's eyes narrowed. You're new here, Mrs. Hart, Eleanor Hart. Well, Mrs. Hart, let me educate you on how Cottonford operates. We're building civilization here. That means keeping certain elements at a distance. For everyone's safety. His hand rested casual on his pistol, especially for women and children who might be too trusting for their own good. I'll keep that in mind. Deputy, see that you do, and Mrs. Hart, if you happen to see your travelers again, you might mention we're still looking for whoever's been stealing cattle. Good citizens report suspicious activities. He touched his hat brim mockery of courtesy and sauntered away. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers following like dust devils. May Collins remained, studying Eleanor with sharp intelligence. Come on, then. Let's get you and the boy settled before the whole town decides you're an Indian lover. The boarding house was clean, spare, smelling of lye soap and baking bread. May installed them in a small room under the eaves. Half rate if you help with cooking and washing, and brought Cal a bowl of beef broth. While Cal dozed, May returned with coffee and blunt questions. That splint wasn't set by any white doctor. Eleanor met her gaze steadily. No. And Kettering's interest wasn't random. No. May nodded slowly. Thought so. My late husband Albert had questions about Kettering too. Started poking around about missing cattle. Altered shipping records. Her voice went flat. Albert disappeared 2 months ago. They found his horse, never found him. The coffee turned to ash in Eleanor's mouth. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Kettering owns half the town through fear or favor. The other half's too scared to speak up. May stood, smoothing her apron. But a woman who walks into town with Indian medicine and stands up to him in the street, that's either very brave or very foolish. Which do you think? Jury's still out, but I could use another pair of hands who isn't afraid of honest work. Restaurant opens at dawn. You know how to make biscuits. Eleanor almost smiled. Best in Missouri, my mother used to say. Then you'll do fine. Just keep those beads out of sight. And if you got friends on the prairie, don't mention them. Not unless you want to find yourself run out of town. Or worse. The next days blurred together. Rise before dawn to start bread. Serve breakfast to merchants, railroad workers, traveling salesmen who eyed her with varying degrees of interest and dismissal. Cal helped when he could, charming May with his eagerness despite the sling. But Cottonford's judgment pressed constant. Women crossed the street rather than speak to her. The blacksmith quoted prices double what the sign advertised. Even Reverend Pike, the mild-mannered minister, suggested gently that she might consider the message her associations sent. Only May stayed steadfast, teaching Eleanor the restaurant's rhythms while sharing carefully edited town gossip. Through her, Eleanor learned the shape of Cottonford's power Kettering at the center like a spider, connections radiating to the railroad company, the land office, even the territorial judge. He weren't always deputy, May confided one evening, rolling out pie crust with violent efficiency. Came to town 3 years back with money and connections. Bought his badge same as you'd buy a new hat. Why does everyone tolerate it? Fear, favor, folk just trying to survive. May's hands stilled. And because anyone who asks too many questions ends up like Albert. Cal, meanwhile, grew stronger daily. The proper food and rest worked as well as Hawk's medicines. But he kept the blue beads hidden in his pocket, fingering them when he thought no one watched. Once, Eleanor caught him staring toward the prairie with such longing it squeezed her heart. You miss him, she said quietly. Hawk. Cal nodded. He didn't look at me like I was broken, just needed fixing. Eleanor understood. In Cottonford, they were both broken things, widow without a man's protection. Boy who'd accepted Indian charity. The town's judgment hung like smoke, staining everything. A week into their residence, trouble arrived with the morning coffee crowd. Eleanor was serving when she heard Cal's voice from the kitchen, high with indignation. Give those back. She rushed in to find Kettering holding the blue beads, Cal reaching for them with his good arm, while May held him back. Found these in the boy's pocket, Kettering announced to his companions. Indian trash, probably stolen. They were a gift, Cal's face flushed red, for peaceful dreams. Cal, hush. Eleanor stepped forward, voice steady despite her racing heart. Deputy, those beads belong to my brother. Do they now? Kettering rolled them between his fingers. Funny thing about Indian goods, never know what else might be hidden with them. Messages, maybe, signals to rustler friends. They're prayer beads, Eleanor said quietly. Nothing more. Prayer beads. He laughed, ugly. Your boy praying to heathen spirits now. Misses. Heart, what's next? War paint and scalping knives. The breakfast crowd pressed into the kitchen doorway, eager for drama. Eleanor felt the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Back down. Let him take the beads. Confirm their place at the bottom of Cottonford's hierarchy, or my brother prays to the same God you do. Deputy, just because kindness came from unexpected hands doesn't make it less holy. Silence. Even May held her breath. Kettering's face darkened. You got a mouth on you, woman. Your husband should have taught you better. My husband is dead. The words came out harder than intended. So I'll have to muddle through with my own judgment. That judgment's gonna get you in trouble. But he dropped the beads on the floor, grinding one under his boot heel. Blue glass scattered like tears. Cottonford's got no place for Indian lovers. You'd best remember that. He stalked out, companions trailing. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers already spreading. Eleanor knelt to gather the broken beads, hands trembling now that danger had passed. Cal dropped beside her, touching the scattered pieces. He broke them. We'll restring what we can. She pulled him close. They still mean what they meant. May stood over them, expression unreadable. Then, both of you, out back, now. In the small yard behind the restaurant, May rounded on Eleanor. What are you thinking, challenging him openly? He's a bully. He's a killer. May's composure cracked. Albert thought he could stand up too, thought righteousness would protect him. Her voice broke. I'm still waiting for his body to come home. Eleanor felt cold despite the morning sun. I'm sorry. I didn't think... No, you didn't. You've got that boy to think of. And if you can't keep your head down for your own sake, do it for his. That night, lying wakeful while Cal slept, Eleanor turned the problem over like a puzzle. They couldn't leave no money, nowhere to go. But staying meant either bowing to Kettering's reign or painting a target on their backs. Cal stirred, whimpering bad dreams despite the remaining beads clutched in his fist. Eleanor smoothed his hair, humming the lullaby their mother used to sing. Outside, wind rattled the windows like searching fingers. Was Hawk out there somewhere on the dark prairie? Did he know what his kindness had cost them? Or maybe her heart twisted at the thought maybe he'd warned her about Cottonford because he already knew. In the morning, she found a package on the restaurant's back step. No note, no sign of who'd left it. Inside a new string of blue beads, identical to the first, and a small leather pouch of the medicine Hawk had given her. Eleanor's hands shook as she pocketed both. Someone was watching, someone knew. That day, the restaurant felt different. Conversations stopped when she entered. Orders came curt, tips non-existent. Even the traveling salesman avoided her eyes. Like a disease, May muttered, counting the meager till. Association with Indians. Catches fast in a town like this. But that evening, as Eleanor scrubbed dishes, Reverend Pike appeared in the kitchen doorway. The elderly minister looked troubled but determined. Mrs. Hart, might I speak freely? She dried her hands slowly. Of course, Reverend. I've been praying on what happened this morning. What Deputy Kettering did was wrong. Unchristian. He pulled out a worn envelope. I knew your husband. Years ago, he helped my nephew when the boy was in trouble. I never forgot that kindness. The envelope contained $10 a fortune to her now. Reverend, I can't... It's not charity, it's justice, small as it is. He glanced around nervously. But be careful. Kettering's got the devil's own memory for grudges, and there's talk. What kind of talk? About the rustling. Some say it's not Indians at all. Say the cattle end up on eastbound trains, bills of sale appearing from nowhere. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Your husband asked similar questions in Missouri. Didn't he before he died? Eleanor's blood chilled. How did you? Telegraph operators talk, especially when someone's checking up on a new widow. He patted her hand gently. Faith comes in many forms. Mrs. Hart, Sometimes it wears feathers and speaks Lakota. Sometimes it asks uncomfortable questions. Don't let them silence either." He left quickly, leaving Eleanor staring at the money. Henry had been investigating corruption in Missouri before the accident she'd never quite believed was accidental. Now she'd fled to Dakota only to find the same shadow. That night, she gave Cal the new beads. His face lit up despite their circumstances. "He didn't forget us," he whispered. No, Eleanor thought. Hawk hadn't forgotten, but remembering might be the most dangerous gift of all. Outside, Cotton Ford settled into uneasy sleep, but under the boarding house eaves, a widow counted coins and calculated chances, while a boy clutched blue beads and dreamed of hawks circling wide prairie skies. The town of Whispers had shown its nature. Now Eleanor Hart had to decide bow to its will or find the courage to whisper back. In the darkness, wind carried the scent of sage from the distant hills, a reminder that Cotton Ford's boundaries were man-made things, and that somewhere beyond the false-fronted buildings and frightened citizens, different laws governed hearts brave enough to follow them. The message came through May, delivered with morning coffee and worried eyes. "There's a rancher needs someone who speaks English proper. Translation work. His foreman's Norwegian. Barely knows 10 words." Eleanor read the real message in May's careful tone. "Where?" "Benson Spread, about 5 miles north, near the old mission road." May busied herself with unnecessary dish stacking. "Might take you past interesting country." The mission road, where Hawk had said to leave a signal. Eleanor's hands stilled on the bread dough. 3 weeks in Cotton Ford had worn her thin the constant watching, whispers following like shadows, Kettering's presence heavy as summer thunder. But this... "Cal could come," she said carefully. "His arm's healing well." May nodded. "Fresh air might do the boy good. Just be back before dark. Prairie's unpredictable this time of year." An hour later, Eleanor guided a borrowed wagon along the rutted track, Cal bouncing beside her. His spirits had lifted the moment they left town. Face turned to catch the wind like a flower-seeking sun. "Look," he pointed to a red-tailed hawk circling above. "Think it's a sign." Before Eleanor could answer, a rider emerged from a stand of cottonwoods. Her heart leaped, then settled. Hawk looked different in daylight, more solid, real than her memory had painted. His eyes found hers, held, then shifted to Cal. "Young warrior, your arm heals well." Cal practically glowed. "Doc Henley says it's the best field medicine he's seen." "Ah, white doctor approves." Hawk's mouth quirked. "I am honored." Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We're grateful." "Gratitude is for strangers. We are not strangers now." He guided his horse alongside the wagon. "May Collins sends interesting messages." "You know May." Her husband was a fair man. He traded honestly, asked questions when cattle went missing from Indian lands too. His expression darkened. Before he disappeared, the implication hung between them. Eleanor gripped the reins tighter. "The rustling, it's not your people." "No, but we make convenient blame." He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a folded paper. "This was posted at Fort Robinson. Thought you should see." Eleanor read quickly. Blood chilling. A new government survey of available lands. The Lakota hunting grounds marked for redistribution. The railroad company listed as primary beneficiary. "They're stealing your land." "They need excuse first. Rustling, violence. Any reason to call us hostile?" Hawk's jaw tightened. "Your Deputy Kettering has been busy making such excuses." "The cattle, where do they go?" "East, hidden rail spurs, midnight loading. Papers appear. Bills of sale for cattle that never existed until they were stolen." He paused. "Your husband investigated such schemes." Eleanor's throat tightened. "In Missouri, railway land grabs, fabricated deeds. He was Killed before he could prove anything. I am sorry. Simple words, but they carried weight. Cal, who'd been listening wide-eyed, suddenly spoke. Is that why those men robbed us, because they knew about Palm? Eleanor and Hawk exchanged glances. Too perceptive. Her little brother. Maybe, she said gently. But we're safe now. Are we? Cal's voice went small. Deputy Kettering looks at us like he's waiting for something. Hawk studied the boy gravely. You see clear, young warrior. That is good. Clear eyes keep you safe. He reached into his vest, pulled out a small bundle. For you. Cal unwrapped it reverently, a leather sheath holding a small knife, the handle carved with simple designs. Every warrior needs good blade, for cutting rope, preparing food, marking trail. Hawk's eyes met Eleanor's, seeking permission. If your sister allows... Eleanor nodded, throat thick. This dangerous kindness, bridging worlds that weren't supposed to touch. Thank you, Cal breathed, strapping the sheath to his belt with his good hand. They reached a wider spot in the trail where it forked one path leading to the Benson Ranch, visible in the distance, the other winding toward the river through broken country. There is something else, Hawk said quietly. Evidence, maybe, but... He glanced at Cal. I'm not a baby, Cal protested. I can help. Eleanor wrestled with protectiveness and practicality. Leaving Cal would mean splitting up, but taking him. It is not far, Hawk added, and the boy sees clear. Sometimes young eyes catch what old ones miss. The decision made itself. They turned toward the river, following a path that was more suggestion than road. The country grew wilder, cottonwoods thickening, the sound of water growing stronger. There, Hawk pointed to a cut in the riverbank, almost hidden by overhanging willows. Cattle were driven through here 2 nights ago. But look. Eleanor saw it immediately. Wheel ruts, deep and fresh, following the cattle trail. Wagons. But why would rustlers use wagons? To carry what cattle cannot. Hawk dismounted, studying the tracks. Telegraph wire, building supplies, things for making permanent camp. Cal, exploring nearby, called out, Found something! He held up a wooden stake, fresh cut, with surveyor's marks. Eleanor's blood chilled. They're surveying for the railroad, through Indian land. Through treaty land, Hawk corrected grimly. But treaties are paper. These, he gestured to the hidden trail, the survey stakes. These are real. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Eleanor glanced at the sky, surprised to find it dark with building clouds. The morning sunshine felt like a different lifetime. Storm coming, Hawk said. Fast, we need shelter. As if to emphasize his words, the wind picked up, sending cottonwood leaves spinning like coins. The first fat raindrops spattered down. The Benson Ranch? Too far. Hawk was already moving, leading them along the riverbank. This way. The storm hit with prairie fury, rain in sheets, lightning turning the world white. Eleanor could barely see Hawk ahead. Cal pressed against her, the knife clutch forgotten in very real fear. Then, through the chaos, a shadow of safety. An old dugout built into the riverbank, probably a trapper's winter camp. They tumbled inside just as hail began mixing with rain. The space was small but dry, smelling of earth and old smoke. Hawk checked the corners for inhabitant snakes, badgers, anything seeking shelter, while Eleanor settled Cal on a bed of old grass. My knife, Cal suddenly cried. I dropped it! He started for the entrance, but Hawk caught him gently. Let it go, young warrior. The storm gives and takes. We'll find it after... Thunder crashed directly overhead. Cal whimpered, pressing into Eleanor's side. She held him close, feeling his bird-bone thinness, the rapid beat of his heart. Story helps, Hawk said quietly. He settled across from them, somehow making the small space feel less confined. My grandmother told stories in storms, said it gave the thunder gods something to listen to besides their own noise. So while the storm raged, Hawk told stories about Iktomi the spider trickster, about how the meadowlark got its yellow breast. His voice wove a calm center while chaos reigned outside. Cal relaxed gradually, exhaustion winning over fear. He dozed against Eleanor's shoulder, breath evening out. He's brave, Hawk said softly, like his sister. I don't feel brave. Eleanor kept her voice low. I feel lost. Everything I thought I was building, gone. And now this place, these people who hate what they don't understand. You are not lost. You are finding new trail. His eyes reflected the dim light. It is frightening, also necessary. Why help us, really? Hawk was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my sister married a white trader. Good man, like Albert Collins. When she went to his town, they made her life sorrow, called her savage, said her children were cursed. His voice roughened. She died of sadness more than sickness. Her husband tried to get justice, but a shrug that said everything. What happened to him? Disappeared. Like Albert. Like your husband. Maybe. Hawk met her eyes. So when I see you, standing in street, facing down Kettering for blue beads and a boy's dignity, I think maybe some things can be different. The storm was passing, thunder grumbling into distance, but neither moved to leave the shelter of earth and honesty. I found something else, Hawk said finally. He pulled out a water-stained ledger page. This was hidden at the loading site. Eleanor read. Excitement building. Lists of cattle, dates, locations, and initials. VK appeared again and again, but also others. Town names she recognized, amounts that made her whistle low. This is huge, not just Cotton Ford, the whole territory. Yes, but proof needs to reach honest law. Not easy when dishonest law holds the keys. Lightning flickered once more, illuminating the dugout. In that moment, Eleanor saw it all clear: the danger, the impossibility, the absolute necessity of trying. We need more, she said. Documents, witnesses, enough that they can't bury it. Hawk's eyebrow rose. You said we aren't strangers now. She lifted her chin. Unless that was just storm talk. A smile ghosted his features. Eleanor Hart, you would make dangerous ally. Good thing you're dangerous, too. Cal stirred, mumbling. The moment broke. But something had shifted, settled into place like a bone properly set. They ventured out to find the storm had transformed the world. The river ran high and muddy. Branches littered the ground. And there, stuck in a cottonwood's roots, Cal's knife gleamed wet but whole. See? Hawk retrieved it, wiped it clean. Storm gives back sometimes. The journey to town was quiet, each lost in thought. As Cotton Ford's buildings appeared, Hawk reined up. I should not go closer. Eleanor nodded, understanding. But Cal protested. When will we see you again? When you need to. Hawk touched his chest, then pointed to Cal's. Warriors know. Listen here, not here. Head, then heart. As he turned to go, Eleanor called out, The ledger page, take it. It's safer with you. No? He smiled at her surprise. You found it. You decide its fate. This is your fight too now. Then he was gone, melting into the prairie grass like smoke. Cal watched until even Eagle Eyes couldn't spot movement. Ellie, are we going to help him? She thought of Henry, investigating until investigation killed him. Of Maze Albert, asking questions until questions silenced him. Of Hawk's sister, dying of a broken heart in a hostile town. Yes, she said quietly, we're going to help. They rolled into Cotton Ford as sunset painted the sky purple and gold. May met them at the boarding house, relief clear on her face. Storm catch you. We found shelter. Eleanor helped Cal down, noting how naturally he checked his new knife. May, I need to ask you something. About Albert's papers. Did he keep records? May's eyes sharpened. Why? Eleanor glanced around, then leaned close. Because I think it's time someone finished what he started. That night, while Cal slept with his knife under his pillow, Eleanor and May sat in the kitchen, lamplight pooling yellow between them. May had retrieved a box from some secret place Albert's notes, careful documentation of discrepancies, questions without answers. I couldn't make sense of it, May admitted. But if you have new information... Eleanor spread out the water-stained ledger page. May's intake of breath was answer enough. This connects it all, but we need more. Need to know where the cattle go, who profits, how deep it runs. Dangerous knowledge. May's fingers traced her husband's handwriting. Gets people disappeared. Or gets justice, finally. May studied her long and hard. That Indian hawk, he's part of this? Yes. You trust him. Eleanor thought of stories in storms, of blue beads restrung, of a knife returned by a giving river. With our lives, May nodded slowly. Then God help us all, because once Kettering realizes what we're doing... She didn't need to finish. They both knew the stakes. Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant now. Perhaps another storm building over the mountains, or perhaps just echoes of the one past, reminders that on the prairie, weather and men could turn violent without warning. Eleanor touched the hidden ledger page, thinking of Hawk somewhere in the darkness, carrying the same dangerous knowledge. Partners now, allied across boundaries that existed more in men's hearts than on God's earth. The river still ran high from the storm, and somewhere along its banks, the truth waited like Cal's dropped knife lost in the storm, but not destroyed, waiting for brave hands to pull it from the mud and hold it to the light. The September heat had broken, giving way to nights that whispered of winter. Eleanor pulled her shawl tighter as she and Hawk crouched in the shadow of a railroad equipment shed, watching armed men patrol the hidden spur line they'd discovered. 7 guards, Hawk murmured. More than usual. They're moving something big tonight. Eleanor's breath misted in the cold air. 2 weeks of careful surveillance had led to this, a major shipment, one that might provide the proof they needed. A low whistle came from the rocky outcrop above Cal's signal, all clear from his vantage point. Eleanor's chest tightened with worry and pride. She'd tried to keep him away, but the boy had inherited Henry's stubborn streak. Your brother sees well in darkness, Hawk observed, like young owl. He's been practicing. She didn't mention Cal's nightmares, how he only slept peacefully with the knife under his pillow, one hand clutching the blue beads. Hoofbeats approached. They pressed deeper into shadow as Kettering rode past, close enough that Eleanor could smell his tobacco. Behind him, wagons rolled heavy, not with cattle this time, but crates marked mining equipment. Mining equipment, she breathed. Hawk's jaw tightened. Not mining. Those marks, I've seen them at Fort Robinson. Army surplus, rifles, maybe ammunition. Eleanor's blood chilled. Bad enough to steal cattle. But weapons, who are they arming? Whoever pays, or perhaps... His voice dropped. Perhaps they plan to use them. Create an Indian uprising. Justification to clear the land. The implications staggered her. All those families, native and white alike, caught in a war manufactured for profit. More riders appeared, townmen Eleanor recognized. Baker Hutchins from the bank, Garrett Palmer, who ran the land office, even Mayor Josephson, though he looked uncomfortable, constantly checking over his shoulder. Half the town's involved, she whispered. Or trapped. See how some ride like men going to their own funeral? He was right. Kettering led with confidence, but others followed like cattle to slaughter, caught in whatever web he'd woven. They watched the weapons transfer to a special rail car, documented every face, every crate. Eleanor's fingers cramped from gripping the pencil, but she kept writing. Evidence, proof. Then Cal's whistle came again, sharp, urgent, danger. Hawk reacted instantly, pulling Eleanor behind the water tower as footsteps approached their former hiding spot. 2 men with lanterns, searching systematically. "No, they were here," one muttered. "Trampled grass by the rocks." Eleanor's heart hammered. If they found Cal... But her brother had learned well. No sound came from above. No movement. After eternal minutes, the searchers moved on. "We need to go," Hawk breathed against her ear. They slipped away like ghosts, collecting Cal from his perch. The boy's face was pale but determined. "I counted 40 crates," he reported as they moved through the darkness. And Deputy Kettering kept checking a telegram, looking worried. "You did well," Hawk told him. "True Scout's eye." They'd left horses hidden in a dry wash Hawk's paint. The sturdy mare May had borrowed from a friend, and a pony for Cal. As they prepared to mount, snow began falling. Soft at first, then heavier. "September snow," Eleanor murmured. "Too early." "Prairie tests us." Hawk studied the sky. "This will grow worse. We need shelter." The storm built with unnatural speed. Within minutes, snow fell so thick they could barely see. Wind howled like a living thing, driving ice crystals that stung exposed skin. Eleanor lost all sense of direction. Only Hawk's presence ahead, Cal's pony tied to her mare, kept panic at bay. The world became a white wall of cold and chaos. Then, blessed relief, the dark bulk of rock formations. Hawk led them unerringly to a deep overhang, almost a cave, sheltered from the worst of the wind. Ancient fire rings showed others had found refuge here across the centuries. They worked together without words. Hawk and Cal gathering windfall wood while Eleanor unsaddled horses and arranged their supplies. Soon a small fire pushed back the darkness, though wind still shrieked beyond their shelter. "We'll be missed," Eleanor worried. "May expects us back. May Collins is wise woman. She'll know storm caught us." Hawk fed sticks to the fire with patient skill. "Better alive tomorrow than frozen tonight." They shared what food they had: jerky, hard biscuits, dried apple May had packed. Cal dozed against Eleanor's shoulder, exhausted from fear and excitement. In the fire's glow, Hawk looked younger. The harsh lines of survival softened. He caught her watching and didn't look away. "You're cold," he said simply, moving closer. It wasn't a question. Eleanor felt the warmth radiating from him, fought the urge to lean in. Propriety warred with pragmatism and something deeper, unnamed. "We could freeze," she said, voice barely audible over the wind. Yes. Still, neither moved. The space between them hummed with possibility and impossibility alike. Then Cal shivered in his sleep, breaking the spell. Without hesitation, Hawk removed his coat, wrapped it around both hearts. The gesture was practical, protective, but his hands lingered just a moment on Eleanor's shoulders. "Sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch." But sleep proved impossible. Eleanor stared into the fire, acutely aware of every breath, every small movement. The storm had trapped them in this bubble outside normal life, where usual rules felt as distant as summer. "Your husband," Hawk said suddenly. "You loved him." The question surprised her. "Yes, he was good, kind, curious about the world." She swallowed past unexpected tears. "They killed him for asking questions. And yet you ask questions too. Someone has to." She shifted carefully, trying not to wake Cal. "What about you? Was there someone?" A long pause. "There was to be, arranged when we were children, but she chose differently when the time came. Married a man who stayed on reservation, accepted agency rules." His voice held no bitterness. "She chose safety. I couldn't fault her." "But you chose different." I chose to keep moving, to watch, to remember what was before the boundaries. He added another stick to the fire. Lonely choice sometimes. The word hung between them. Lonely. Eleanor knew its shape intimately, the space in bed where Henry should be. The decisions made without counsel. The ache of skin that remembered touch. "Tell me something," she said. "When this is over, exposing Kettering, stopping the land grab, what do you want?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, small things. Place where my horses can graze without permits. Fire that doesn't need hiding. Maybe... He stopped. Maybe someone who sees me not as savage or scout or problem, just as man. Eleanor's throat tightened. "I see you." The words escaped before wisdom could catch them. Hawk went very still. Ellie, Cal's sleepy voice broke the moment. "Are we safe?" "Yes, sweetheart, the storm will pass." But even as she soothed her brother, Eleanor felt Hawk watching her, felt the weight of words spoken and unspoken, choices branching like trails in snow. The wind began dying near dawn. They ventured out to find the world transformed, 2 feet of snow blanketing everything, turning familiar landscape foreign. "Trails covered," Hawk observed, "but also our tracks from last night. The storm gives and takes." They made slow progress back toward Cotton Ford. At the split where Hawk would turn toward Lakota lands, he reined up. "From here, you can make it safe." Eleanor nodded, though safe felt like the wrong word for anything involving Cotton Ford. "Hawk," Cal urged his pony closer. "When will we see you again?" "When time is right." He touched his chest in what Eleanor now recognized as his gesture of promise. "Keep practicing your scouting, young warrior." Then his eyes found Eleanor's, in daylight, with town duties calling and propriety reasserting itself. Last night felt like a dream, but his gaze held steady, acknowledging what had passed between them in the storm's shelter. "Let me feel you once," she whispered, the words torn from some deep place. "Just so I know you're real." The request hung crystalline in the cold air. Cal, wise beyond years, suddenly found the horizon fascinating. Hawk dismounted slowly, came to stand beside her horse. His hand covered hers on the reins, warm, calloused, real. Then, with infinite care, he helped her down. For a moment they stood in the snow, no closer than propriety allowed, but connected by that single point of touch. Eleanor felt his heartbeat through their joined hands, quick as her own. Then he pulled her into an embrace, brief, fierce, forbidden. She breathed him in leather and sage and snow-clean air, felt the solid truth of him, this man who stood between worlds and chose to stand with her. "You are seen too," he murmured against her hair. "Eleanor who asks questions, Eleanor who stands for truth." He released her as suddenly as he'd acted, helped her remount with formal courtesy, but his eyes blazed with promise and pain alike. Then he was gone, his paint's tracks filling with blown snow even as they watched. "Ellie," Cal's voice came small, "you love him." She couldn't lie to those earnest eyes. "I don't know what to call it." "Pa would understand," Cal said with child's certainty. He always said love was bigger than rules. As Cotton Ford smoke appeared ahead, Eleanor held those words close. Love bigger than rules, truth stronger than fear. May met them at the edge of town, relief stark on her face. "Thank God, when the storm hit..." She took in their snow-covered clothes, the exhaustion, something else in Eleanor's eyes. Her expression sharpened, but she said only, "Come, hot food and explanations, in that order." But explanations would have to wait. As they turned onto Main Street, Eleanor saw the crowd gathered outside the jail. Kettering stood on the steps, voice carrying clear. "I caught red-handed stealing cattle from the Benson spread. This is what comes of tolerating savages near civilized lands." Eleanor's blood froze. 3 Lakota men knelt in the mud, Hands bound one barely older than Cal. Liars. A woman pushed forward. She recognized Mrs. Benson. My husband sold those cattle fair and square. These men came to collect what was owed. Kettering backhanded her casual as swatting flies. She fell hard, blood streaming from her nose. Anyone else want to defend cattle thieves? His hand rested on his gun. The crowd stayed silent, even Reverend Pike, though his face twisted with anguish. Eleanor felt Cal trembling beside her, hand going to his knife. She caught his wrist. Not here, not now, not when it would only add bodies to Kettering's count. But as they watched the Lakota men dragged into the jail, she made herself memorize every face in that crowd, who looked away, who looked satisfied, who looked sick but stayed silent. Tonight had shown her what stood between them and justice, not just Kettering's guns, but a whole town's cowardice. The weapon shipment, the land grab, the manufactured war, all of it balanced on silence. In the boarding house kitchen, while Cal ate like he'd been starved for days, Eleanor spread out her notes from the night's surveillance. Names, dates, evidence that could break Kettering's hold if she could find someone brave enough to act on it. May studied the pages, face grave. This is enough to hang half the town. Or save it, Eleanor countered. May, those men in jail, they'll be tried by Judge Morrison, Kettering's judge. They'll hang for crimes they didn't commit unless someone speaks. May's fingers traced her husband's handwriting mixed with Eleanor's fresh notes. Albert would have, but Albert's gone. Outside, snow began falling again, gentler this time. Eleanor thought of Hawk somewhere in that white expanse. Probably already working to free his people through his own methods, but 3 men in jail couldn't wait for careful plans. There's another way, she said slowly. The telegraph. If we could get word to Fort Robinson, to honest officers. Kettering controls the telegraph office. Then we go around him. There's a key in the land office. Palmer's too scared to be part of the inner circle, but he has access for property transfers. Eleanor met May's eyes. I saw him tonight, riding like a condemned man. May nodded slowly. Garrett Palmer. His daughter died last winter. Fever. Doc couldn't come because he was treating Kettering's men after a skirmish with Indians. Her voice turned hard. Skirmish that left 2 Lakota boys dead and Palmer's girl burning up alone. They looked at each other. 2 women bound by loss and determination. Tonight, Eleanor said, while they're all celebrating their prisoners. Tonight, May agreed. Then, softer. That embrace in the snow, Cal told me. Heat flooded Eleanor's face. May! No shame in it, just be careful. The heart makes its own trails, but this world punishes those who follow them. That night, as Cotton Ford drank to Kettering's success, Eleanor Hart prepared to commit treason against his reign. In her pocket, wrapped in oilcloth, she carried the truth. All it needed now was a voice brave enough to speak it. Sunday morning came crisp and clear, church bells cutting through air that smelled of snow and wood smoke. Eleanor sat in the hard pew, Cal fidgeting beside her, while Reverend Pike's voice trembled through the opening prayers. The old minister looked haggard, aged a decade in the week since the Lakota men's arrest. His hands shook on the Bible, and twice he lost his place in the familiar verses. Before we begin today's sermon, Pike said, voice barely carrying to the back rows, that is, the Lord compels me to. Get on with it, Reverend. Kettering lounged in the front pew like he owned it, which, Eleanor supposed, he did. Some of us have business to attend. Pike's shoulders straightened. Something flickered in his eyes, the ghost of the man he'd been before. Fear bent him. The Lord compels me to speak truth. The congregation stirred uneasily. Eleanor's hand found the papers hidden in her coat, the evidence she and May had risked everything to gather, including Palmer's testimony, telegraph records, and documented proof of the weapons shipment. Last week, Pike continued, stronger now. 3 innocent men were arrested, charged with crimes they did not commit, and I stood silent. Reverend. Kettering's voice carried warning. Careful. But Pike had found his spine. He lifted a telegram one Eleanor had managed to send through Palmer's connection, answered by an honest officer at Fort Robinson. Investigation launched into reported irregularities. He read clearly. Federal marshals dispatched, signed, Colonel James Mitchell. The church erupted. Kettering shot to his feet, hand moving toward his gun before remembering where he was. You old fool. I am a fool. Pike agreed, voice ringing now. A fool who let fear silence God's truth, but no more. He pulled out more papers, copies of the evidence Eleanor had provided. Shipping manifests, altered land deeds, records of cattle herds that existed only on paper until they were stolen not by Indians, but by men who sit in these very pews. Eleanor watched the congregation's faces transform shock, anger, dawning comprehension. Some of Kettering's men started toward the pulpit, but others blocked them. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Lies, Kettering roared. This is all lies, stirred up by Indian lovers and... Then let federal marshals determine that. May stood up in her pew, chin high. Unless you're afraid of honest investigation, others found courage in her example. Mrs. Benson, face still bruised from Kettering's blow. The school teacher, even Banker Hutchins, sweating profusely but standing. This is conspiracy, Kettering snarled. You think you know what you're doing. You need me. Without my protection, every savage in the territory will... Your protection. Eleanor couldn't stay silent anymore. She stood, pulled out the original documents. Like the protection you gave my husband in Missouri. Oh yes, Deputy, we know about your connections to the railway schemes there. The accidents that happened to investigators. Kettering's face went white, then red. You're that Hart's widow. Should have known. Well, you'll end the same. The church doors burst open. Snow swirled in with armed men, not Kettering's, but strangers wearing federal badges. Deputy Kettering. The lead marshal looked tired but determined. Judge Morrison, Mayor Josephson. We have warrants. What followed was chaos. Some of Kettering's men tried to run. Others surrendered immediately. Kettering himself stood frozen, calculating, then suddenly grabbed for Cal. Insurance, he snarled, arm around the boy's throat. Anyone moves! But Cal, trained by Hawk, acted on instinct. The knife came out smooth and fast, slicing across Kettering's restraining arm, not deep, but enough to make him release his grip with a curse. Eleanor pulled Cal behind her as marshals tackled Kettering. The deputy fought viciously, screaming threats and promises, but numbers and law prevailed. You don't know what you've done, he shouted as they dragged him out. The savages will burn this town. The railroad will deal with legal authorities. The lead marshal said calmly, as for the Lakota, we'll be releasing those wrongfully imprisoned immediately. The church emptied slowly, townspeople clustering in confused groups. Some looked relieved, others terrified. A few glared at Eleanor with naked hostility. This is your doing, Garrett Palmer said quietly as he passed. But he pressed her hand briefly. Thank you. Outside, Eleanor found May organizing the practical aftermath, which prisoners needed medical attention, where to house the federal officers, how to maintain order with half the town's power structure arrested. You did it, May said simply. We did it. Eleanor's legs suddenly felt weak. May, Kettering's threats about the Lakota. Were lies, mostly, but... May glanced toward the jail. Those 3 men have families. They'll want to know their kin are safe. As if summoned by the thought, riders appeared on the horizon. Eleanor's heart leaped, recognizing Hawk's paint among them. A delegation, riding openly into Cotton Ford for the first time in years. The townspeople scattered like chickens, but the Lakota rode steady to the jail. Hawk's eyes found Eleanor across the square, held for a moment that said everything, then focused on the federal marshal. "We come for our people," he said simply. "They're being released now." The marshal seemed unsurprised by the arrival. "No charges will stand. Deputy Kettering's actions were unlawful." As the three prisoners emerged, blinking in sunlight, their families surrounded them with quiet joy. The youngest, the boy barely older than Cal, limped badly. Without thinking, Eleanor moved forward. "He needs medical attention." The boy's mother looked at her with suspicion, then recognition. "You're the one who sent the wire, who spoke truth." "Others helped, but you risked." The woman touched Eleanor's hand briefly. "We remember." Doc Henley appeared, bag in hand. To his credit, he treated the Lakota boy with the same care he'd shown Cal. The square became an unlikely gathering, Indians and whites occupying the same space, bound by witness to justice served. Eleanor felt a presence at her shoulder. Hawk stood careful inches away, but she felt his warmth like a physical thing. "You saved them," he said quietly. "We all did. The evidence you gathered. May's courage, Pike finally speaking. But you lit the match." His eyes held pride and something deeper. "Dangerous thing, lighting matches." As if to prove his point, shouting erupted from the crowd, some of Kettering's supporters, drunk on noon whiskey and resentment. "Indian lovers, you've doomed us all." A bottle flew, shattering near the Lakota group. Women grabbed children, men reached for weapons. The federal marshals moved to intervene, but violence hung thick as smoke. Then Cal stepped between the groups. "Stop!" His young voice cracked but carried, "Just stop." He held up the blue beads, then his knife. "These were gifts, from someone who helped when nobody else would. You want to hate that, fine, but hate won't grow crops or build homes or keep anybody safe." Eleanor's throat tightened with pride and terror. Her baby brother, standing like David before Goliath. Reverend Pike found his voice again. "The boy speaks wisdom. We've let hate and greed poison our town long enough. Time to choose different." Slowly, tensions eased. The drunk troublemakers found themselves outnumbered by citizens tired of living in fear. The Lakota delegation prepared to leave. Their people recovered. But Hawk lingered. There will be consequences. Kettering has allies, and the railroad won't abandon their plans easily. "I know." Eleanor met his concern steadily. "But we'll face them as they come." He studied her, this warrior who'd chosen truth over safety. Then, deliberately, he took her hand in full view of the town. "The invitation stands," he said formally. "You and your brother are welcome in our camps. Always." Gasps and mutters rose from the watching crowd. Such an invitation, publicly given, was unprecedented. Eleanor felt the weight of eyes, judgment, possibility. "Thank you," she said, equally formal. "We are honored." He squeezed her hand once, then mounted. The Lakota rode out as they'd come, dignified, united, unbroken. Eleanor turned to find the town watching her, some with hostility, some with confusion, but some May, Pike, Mrs. Benson, others with something like respect. "Well," May said briskly, "no point standing around. There's work to be done." And there was. Kettering's arrest left a power vacuum. The town needed new leadership, honest law, systems that couldn't be corrupted by the next smooth-talking schemer. Over the following days, Eleanor found herself at the center of rebuilding efforts. Her education, her experience with Henry's investigations, even her connections to the Lakota proved valuable. When the federal judge arrived to oversee trials, he appointed her to help document the extent of Kettering's crimes. 5 counties, she reported, showing maps and ledgers. The scheme reached 5 counties, thousands of cattle, Hundreds of families displaced or impoverished. And the weapons, intended to arm regulators' mercenaries, really create enough violence to justify military intervention, clearing Indian lands for the railroad. The judge, an elderly man with keen eyes, nodded grimly. You've done exceptional work, Mrs. Hart. Have you considered a position with the territorial government? We need investigators who can't be bought. Eleanor felt the offer's weight. Stability, purpose, recognition. I need to think, she said. That evening, she found Cal at their usual spot by the river, practicing with his knife. He'd grown in these weeks, still her little brother, but touched by prairie steel. The judge offered me a job, she said. Cal nodded, unsurprised. In the capital. Eventually, it would mean leaving Cotton Ford. Good. At her look, he shrugged. This place, it's better now, but it still feels like a coat that doesn't fit right. Eleanor knew what he meant. Despite their victory, despite new friends and respect earned, Cotton Ford carried too many shadows. Where would you want to go? She asked. Cal's answer came instantly. Somewhere between not full town, not full wilderness, somewhere we could see hawks sometimes, where people don't stare at my beads or your choices. That night, Eleanor stood at her window watching stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, Hawk watched the same sky. The space between them felt both vast and insignificant. A knock interrupted her thoughts. May entered with coffee and companionship. Heard about the judge's offer, May said without preamble. You'll take it. It's a good opportunity. That's not what I asked. Eleanor smiled despite herself. Trust May to cut through to the heart. I don't know. Cal needs schooling. I need work, but your heart pulls elsewhere. May sipped her coffee thoughtfully. You know, there are other ways to live. Other places. The Bensons are selling their ranch good land, fair price. Close enough to town for supplies and schooling, far enough for breathing room. Eleanor's pulse quickened. I don't know anything about ranching. Neither did half the folks out here when they started. Besides, May's eyes twinkled. I hear the local Lakota are generous with advice about land management. For friends. The idea took root, spreading like prairie grass after fire. A place of their own. Middle ground where boundaries blurred. It's just a thought, May said, rising. But Eleanor, that man looks at you like you hung the moon. And you look back the same. Don't let fear dressed up as wisdom keep you from happiness. After May left, Eleanor pulled out paper and pen. 3 letters to write, one to the judge, grateful but declining, one to the Bensons, inquiring about terms, and one to leave at the Mission Road marker, where white cloth signals had given way to deeper communication. We choose the middle ground, she wrote simply, come find us there. Because sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in choosing sides, but in creating new space where none existed before. Where a white woman and a Lakota man might build something beyond the reach of those who divide the world into us and them. Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time. By morning, it would cover the bloodstains in the square, the broken glass, the marks of struggle. But underneath, the earth waited patient for spring. For new growth, for seeds planted by brave hands willing to tend tomorrow's harvest. Eleanor sealed the letters, then went to check on Cal. He slept peaceful, beads and knife within reach, ready for whatever dawn might bring. They'd chosen their trail. Now all that remained was to walk it. The storm struck without warning on a moonless November night. Eleanor woke to thunder that wasn't thunder, the deep rumble of many horses, shouts carrying through the boarding house walls. Ellie Cal burst through her door. Something's wrong! The whole town! Gunfire cracked like breaking bones. Eleanor pulled Cal down as the window shattered, glass sparkling in the lamplight she hadn't lit. Stay low. She grabbed Henry's rifle, checked the load with hands steadier than her hammering heart. Through the broken window came the acrid smell of smoke. May appeared in the doorway. shotgun in hand, still in her nightdress but eyes sharp. Kettering's men must have broken him out during transport to the territorial prison. More gunshots, screaming, the orange glow of fire beginning to paint the walls. "They're burning the courthouse," May said grimly. "All the evidence, the records, the witnesses." Eleanor finished. Anyone who'd testified, who'd stood up in church that Sunday. "They'll come for us." "Already are." May pointed to shadows moving in the street below. "Backstairs, now." They fled through darkness, the town exploding into chaos around them. Eleanor kept Cal close, rifle ready, following May's sure knowledge of Cotton Ford's back ways. Behind them, flames leaped building to building. "The livery," May panted. "Get horses, get out!" But armed men blocked their path. Eleanor recognized one Tate from that first robbery on the trail. His smile was ugly with vengeance. "Well, well, the Indian lover and the trouble-making widow." He raised his gun. "Kettering sends his regards." Eleanor moved without thinking, shoving Cal behind a water trough as bullets sparked off metal. She fired back, Henry's lessons flooding back. Squeeze, don't jerk, breathe between shots. May's shotgun boomed. Men scattered, cursing, in the confusion. A new sound war cries splitting the night like lightning. Lakota riders poured into the street, hawk at their head. His paint horse seemed to fly over obstacles, and his rifle spoke with deadly precision. Kettering's men, caught between fleeing townspeople and incoming warriors, broke ranks. "This way!" Hawk wheeled toward them, extending a hand to Eleanor. She didn't hesitate, swinging up behind him. Feeling Cal grabbed by another rider, May boosted onto a third horse. They fled through streets turned battlefield. The courthouse burned like a pyre to corruption, but other fires spread where they shouldn't. Homes, the church, the school. "They're destroying everything," Eleanor shouted over the chaos. "Covering tracks," Hawk called back. "No evidence, no witnesses, no justice." At the town's edge, they found others gathering. Doc Henley supporting Reverend Pike. Mrs. Benson with her children. The honest families who'd chosen truth over safety. Maybe 30 souls, lost looking in nightclothes in terror. "The mission," Pike gasped. "Old stone building. Might survive the fire." But as they turned toward sanctuary, more riders appeared. Kettering himself, flanked by a dozen men. His face showed madness now. All pretense of law stripped away. "Burn it all," he roared. "Every last Indian lover, make it look like a raid. We'll blame the savages." Eleanor felt Hawk tense. More Lakota warriors emerged from the darkness, forming a protective line, the moment balanced on the edge of massacre. Then Cal did something extraordinary. He slipped from his protector's horse and walked into the space between the groups, blue beads held high. "Stop," his young voice carried impossible authority. "You want to kill kids, burn families. That's not even human." Kettering's laugh was ugly. "Boy's gone native. Put him down with the rest." "You'll have to go through me." Eleanor slid from Hawk's horse, moved to stand with her brother. "And me." May joined them. "Me as well." Doc Henley stepped forward. Then Pike, Mrs. Benson, others finding courage in company. The two groups faced each other, hatred and greed against something fragile, but growing stronger. Kettering's men shifted uneasily. Burning buildings was one thing, shooting dozens of people, including children, in cold blood. "Federal marshals are already riding," Eleanor said clearly. "You think they'll ignore an entire town burned? You think you can murder this many witnesses and walk free? Ain't no witnesses if everyone's dead," Kettering snarled. But uncertainty flickered in some faces behind him. Thunder rumbled real this time. The November sky split open, releasing torrents of freezing rain. Fires hissed and sputtered. In the confusion of sudden darkness and weather, everything shifted. Lightning illuminated Hawk, moving like deadly wind. His warriors followed, not killing but disarming, using the storm as cover. Eleanor grabbed Cal, pulling him to safety as combat swirled around them. Through rain and gunfire, she heard Kettering roaring commands that fewer and fewer obeyed. The storm intensified, not just rain but sleet, then snow. Prairie weather gone wild. The river, Hawk materialized beside them. Bridge is out, we make a stand there. They herded the refugees toward the Cheyenne, swollen with storm runoff. Behind them, Cotton Ford burned despite the rain, evidence and hatred consuming each other. At the riverbank, they found unexpected hope. The railroad bridge still stood, and on it, lanterns bobbing federal marshals, arriving early thanks to the telegraph messages Eleanor had managed to send before the attack. "Thank God," Pike whispered. But Kettering wasn't finished. He and his remaining men charged the bridge, desperate to escape into lawless territory. The battle was fierce, but brief, cornered rats against federal authority and Lakota justice combined. Eleanor would always remember the moment Kettering fell, not from a bullet, but from the bridge itself. Rotted timber giving way under his weight. He hung for a moment, clinging to broken wood above raging water. "Help me," he screamed. Hawk reached the spot first, for a heartbeat. Eleanor saw him consider this man who'd caused such pain, threatened everything dear. Then Hawk extended his hand. "Justice isn't vengeance," he said. But Kettering, in his hatred, tried to pull Hawk down with him. The wood splintered completely. Kettering plunged into the dark torrent and was gone. Dawn came gray and quiet, revealing Cotton Ford half destroyed, smoking in the rain. The federal marshals took charge, arresting surviving conspirators, documenting what evidence remained. "We'll rebuild." Mayor Josephson said he'd hidden during the fight, but emerged now, eager to seem helpful. "Cotton Ford will rise." No, Eleanor surprised herself with the firmness. Cotton Ford was built on lies and theft. Let it die. She looked around at the survivors, townspeople, and Lakota, united by trial. Build something new, something better, together. Some nodded immediately. Others looked uncertain, but the seed was planted. Over the following days, as trials proceeded and justice ground slowly forward, Eleanor helped coordinate the practical aftermath. Some families chose to leave entirely. Others, surprisingly, asked to learn from the Lakota about living with the land rather than despite it. "Change comes," Hawk told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the ruins of the boarding house. "Not easy, not quick, but it comes." Cal sat nearby, helping Lakota children teach white children a game with marked stones. His blue beads caught the light, no longer hidden. The judge renewed his offer. Eleanor said, "The investigation position, and I'm thinking of a different kind of investigation. How people who are supposed to be enemies become neighbors. How to build communities that honor both traditions." She met his eyes. It would mean staying in the territory, finding that middle ground we talked about. Hawk's smile was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. "The Benson Ranch. Good land for horses. Good neighbors who remember kindness." His hand found hers. "Good place for new starts." May approached, carrying salvaged items from her restaurant. "Well, are we rebuilding here, or are we being sensible and starting fresh somewhere that doesn't smell like burned corruption?" Eleanor looked at her gathered family blood and chosen both. At the tentative connections forming between former enemies, at the man whose steady presence had become as necessary as breath. "We're starting fresh," she decided. "All of us who want to." The work was hard. Clearing the ranch, building trust between communities with generations of mistrust, creating something that had no template. There were setbacks, those who couldn't release old hatreds, pressure from railroad interests, the simple difficulty of daily survival. But there were victories too. The first shared harvest, the school that taught both traditions, the day Reverend Pike blessed Eleanor and Hawk's union by the river, with May as witness and Cal as proud attendant, wearing his beads openly. "Not the life you expected," May commented, watching Eleanor teach both white and Lakota children to read from the same books. "No," Eleanor agreed. "Something better, something true." She thought sometimes of Henry, who died seeking justice, of Kettering, who died serving greed, of all the choices that led to this moment, a woman once afraid now helping forge a future where fear had less power than hope. Hawk found her one evening at their favorite spot, where prairie met river. He moved differently now, still warrior careful, but without the constant vigilance of the hunted. "Regrets?" he asked. Eleanor considered. The comfortable life she'd lost, the dangerous one she'd chosen, the man beside her who'd shown her that courage could be quiet and love could be revolutionary. "None," she said, and meant it. As stars emerged overhead, children's laughter carried from the ranch, English and Lakota mixing like streams joining to form a stronger river. It wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be, but it was real and growing and good. The storm had passed. What grew in its wake was worth every sacrifice that brought them here. In the distance, a hawk circled against the dying light, riding thermals toward tomorrow. Eleanor watched it fly, her hand in Hawk's, and knew herself home at last. The bridge they'd built wasn't made of wood or stone, but something stronger, trust earned in darkness, love chosen despite odds, and the radical belief that different peoples could share the same sky. It would hold, despite storms past and storms to come. It would hold. The train whistle shrieked across the prairie like a wounded animal. Eleanor pressed herself against the cold metal of the cattle car, rain hammering the roof above. Beside her, Hawk checked his rifle with practiced efficiency. "He's in the third car," May whispered, water streaming down her face. "Saw him board with Fraser and 2 guards. Deputy Kettering escaped during the fire's chaos, hidden for weeks while federal marshals searched, now making his final run with stolen cattle and damning evidence that could destroy half the territorial government." "Bridge coming up," Hawk said. "Once they cross, they reach federal jurisdiction limits." Eleanor knew the stakes. Local marshals can't follow. He disappears forever. Cal appeared from the darkness between cars, sure-footed despite the lurching train. Counted 6 more men in the caboose, armed heavy. Eleanor's heart clenched, seeing her brother moving like a seasoned scout. But there was no time for protecting innocence. Not tonight. Thunder crashed overhead, competing with the train's roar. The storm that had been building all day unleashed its fury, turning the world into water and wind. "Now or never," May said grimly. They moved through the storm-lashed night, using the cattle cars as cover. The animals lowed nervously, sensing danger beyond weather. Eleanor's boots slipped on wet metal, but Hawk's steady hand kept her upright. Through the car window, she glimpsed Kettering thinner, harder, arguing with a man in an expensive suit. Fraser, the railroad executive who'd funded the whole conspiracy. "Don't care about your plans," Kettering snarled. "I want my money and safe passage." "You'll get both," Fraser replied coldly. "Once these documents are destroyed, your testimony dies with them. Deputy." Eleanor felt sick. How many others had died with their testimonies, Henry in Missouri, Albert Collins here, countless unnamed souls who'd asked inconvenient questions. Hawk touched her shoulder, pointed up. The train approached the bridge, massive iron spans over the Cheyenne River, swollen with storm runoff far below. "If we're doing this," he said quietly, "it's now." They split up May and Cal to secure the caboose, prevent reinforcements. Eleanor and Hawk to the money car and its twin prizes, Kettering and evidence. Eleanor had never jumped between moving train cars before. The gap looked impossibly wide, rain-slicked death waiting below. But Hawk went first, landing cat-sure, turning to catch her. She leaped. For a terrifying moment, she hung in space. Then Hawk's arms enclosed her, pulling her to safety. No time to savor the contact shouts erupted from inside. They burst through the door to find chaos. One guard down, clutching his shoulder. Fraser backed against stacked documents boxes. And Kettering, wild-eyed, gun swinging between targets. You, his face contorted, seeing Eleanor. Should have killed you proper. Hawk moved, but Kettering was ready. The gun barked. Hawk spun, fell. Blood spread dark on his shirt. No! Eleanor lunged for Hawk's dropped rifle. Everything slowed. Kettering's gun swinging toward her. Fraser diving for documents. The train hitting the bridge with a metal shriek. And outside, something else, a sound that didn't belong. Explosions, not thunder dynamite. The bridge shuddered. The train lurched. Brakes screaming. Through the window, Eleanor saw its bridge supports collapsing, torn away by more than storm. "You're insane!" Fraser screamed at Kettering. "You've killed us all!" "Better than hanging?" Kettering laughed, high and terrible. "If I burn, everyone burns." The car tilted, documents slid. Eleanor struggled to reach Hawk, who pressed a hand to his side, face gray but eyes alert. Another explosion. The bridge groaned like a living thing. They were still moving, momentum carrying them forward, but slowly, terribly. The rails began to separate from their moorings. "Jump!" Hawk gasped. "Now!" But Eleanor had seen something, a leather portfolio in Fraser's desperate grip. The real evidence. Names, dates, connections spreading like poison through territorial government. She lunged for it. Fraser fought, but terror made him clumsy. The portfolio tore free just as the car tilted further. "The coupling," Hawk struggled upright. "Break the coupling." Of course. Separate the cars before the engine's weight pulled everything down. Eleanor grabbed the emergency brake lever, threw her weight against it. Metal shrieked on metal. Kettering realized their plan. "No!" He raised his gun. Cal appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel, knife flying true. It struck Kettering's wrist, sending the gun spinning. May was right behind, shotgun steady. "Move," she commanded. Working together, they fought the coupling mechanism. The bridge shuddered again. Through rain and chaos, Eleanor heard the front cars separating, engine pulling free with passenger sections. But they were still sliding, tilting toward the edge where bridge met air. "Other side," Hawk directed. Blood seeping between his fingers, but voice strong. "Wait to the land side." They threw themselves against the upper wall as the car tilted further. Documents scattered like snow. Fraser screamed, sliding toward the opening doors and the drop beyond. Eleanor reached for him instinctively. Their eyes met his, full of terror and something else. Regret. He stretched toward her hand. Then Kettering, wounded and maddened, made his final choice. He grabbed Fraser. "Together, partner, like you promised." They fell into darkness and roaring water below. The car lurched to a stop, balanced precariously but holding for heartbeats. No one moved. Then Cal sobbed once, hard, before controlling himself. "Are we, is it?" "Steady for now," May said, but her voice shook. "Everyone out. Careful." They crept from the tilting car onto what remained of the bridge. The storm still raged, but ahead, lanterns bobbed marshals and townspeople, drawn by explosions. Hawk, Eleanor supported him, feeling the warm wet of blood. Too much blood. "Doc Henley!" she screamed into the night. What followed, blurred hands helping, voices calling, the endless careful journey to solid ground. Doc Henley working by lamplight, his face grave but hands sure. "Bullet went through clean," he finally said. "Lucky, inch lower." He didn't finish. Eleanor sat in the mud, holding Hawk's hand while May organized searches for survivors and Cal helped gather scattered documents. The leather portfolio, miraculously intact, held enough evidence to crack the conspiracy wide open. "Kettering's dead," Reverend Pike asked, looking older than ever. "Him and Fraser both," May confirmed. "Took each other down in the end." "The Lord's judgment," Pike murmured, but he looked troubled. Death, even deserved, sat heavy on good souls. As dawn broke gray through dissipating storm clouds, the damage became clear. The bridge destroyed. Several cars derailed but miraculously upright. The engine and passenger cars safe on the far side. And scattered across muddy ground, hundreds of documents. Cal and other young people gathered them carefully. Evidence of corruption spanning 5 states. "This changes everything," Marshal Collins said, reviewing pages. "Names here I never suspected. Judges, senators, railway executives from Chicago to San Francisco." Eleanor felt exhaustion bone deep. They'd won, but at such cost. She looked at Hawk, pale but breathing steady. At May, standing guard despite her own weariness. At Cal, aged beyond his years. "What happens now?" she asked. "Trials. Real ones this time." Collins's face was grim but determined. "Going to need witnesses, strong ones." "You'll have them," Eleanor promised. The journey back was slow. Hawk couldn't ride, so they fashioned a travois proper this time. No emergency measures. He smiled when Cal fussed over the construction. "Teaching you well," he murmured. "The best teacher," Cal said fiercely. They returned to find the community transformed. News of the bridge battle had spread. Those who'd wavered before now chose sides firmly. The territorial governor himself arrived to oversee justice. "Mrs. Hart," he said formally. "Or should I say Mrs.?" He glanced at Hawk. "Hart is fine," Eleanor said. She'd kept Henry's name to honor his memory, and Hawk understood. Names mattered less than bonds. "The territory owes you a debt, all of you." The governor included May, Cal, even the Lakota warriors who'd helped. "What can we do to repay?" Eleanor looked at Hawk, silent communication flowing between them. "Ensure the treaties are honored, really honored, not just paper promises. Investigate every land grab, every suspicious transfer, and..." She took a breath. "Recognize marriages between peoples, all peoples." The governor's eyebrows rose, but he nodded slowly. "I'll see what can be done." What could be done over the following months was remarkable. The corruption trials made national newspapers. The revelation of a conspiracy to steal Indian lands and frame tribes for violence sparked outrage even in eastern cities. Some changes came fast, corrupt officials arrested. Stolen lands returned. Others moved slower hearts and minds. Prejudices generations deep. Eleanor testified in a dozen trials, calm and clear, the leather portfolio's evidence damning. She watched powerful men fall, their empires of greed crumbling. But the real victory was smaller, personal. It was Hawk healing, scars adding to his story but not ending it. Cal growing into a young man who moved easy between worlds. May opening a new restaurant where all were welcome. Her grief for Albert softened by purpose. It was the school where children learned both ways of knowledge, the marriages recognized by law, not just heart, the Lakota and settlers working together, wary still but trying. "Not perfect," Hawk said one evening, watching sunset from their porch. The Benson Ranch had become Heart Ranch, though boundaries meant less when neighbors helped neighbors. "No," Eleanor agreed. "But better." Cal rode up, whooping with joy. The Telegraph Congress passed the bill full investigation into railroad land grabs, using our evidence as the foundation. Eleanor felt Henry's presence then, gentle as wind, his work completed by unexpected hands. Justice served not through vengeance, but truth steadily spoken. That night, they gathered for dinner an extended family born of choice and circumstance. May's cooking, Cal's laughter, Hawk's quiet strength, Lakota friends and white neighbors, sharing table and stories. Reverend Pike offered grace, voice steady now with renewed faith. For bridges built and bridges burned, for justice earned and mercy given, for the courage to see beyond the boundaries others draw. Amen. Amen, they echoed. Outside, night fell gentle on the prairie. No storms tonight, no battles, just peace hard won and carefully tended. Eleanor stepped onto the porch, Hawk joining her. Above, stars wheeled in ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles but beautiful still. Any regrets? She asked their old question. He touched the scar where Kettering's bullet had passed. Scars are stories. This one says we stood for truth. And won. The first victory, he corrected gently. Many more needed. She knew he was right. The fight against prejudice and greed never truly ended. But tonight, with their chosen family safe and their love recognized, with justice served and future bright with possibility, it was enough. A train whistle sounded in the distance, not threat now, but promise. Connection. Commerce done honestly. Travel between peoples who might learn to see each other clear. Come inside, Eleanor said. May's made pie, and Cal's threatening to sing. Hawk laughed rare, precious sound. Then we'd better hurry, save everyone's ears. They went in together to warmth and light and family. Outside, the prairie wind carried seeds of change, planting tomorrow in soil watered by sacrifice and courage. The bridge at Cheyenne River was gone, but what they'd built in its place, understanding, justice, love that transcended boundaries that would stand against any storm. The first snow of autumn came early, dusting the prairie like flour on May's morning biscuits. Eleanor stood at the window of their expanded ranch house, watching Cal teach a group of children, both Lakota and settlers' kids, how to track rabbits in the fresh powder. Natural teacher, Hawk observed, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. His movements showed no trace of the old injury, though Eleanor knew the scars ached in cold weather. Like someone else I know, she replied, accepting the warm cup gratefully. Through the window, they could see the changes 3 years had wrought. What started as the Benson Ranch had grown into something unprecedented, a community where boundaries blurred and differences strengthened rather than divided. Letter came, Hawk said, producing an official-looking envelope. From Washington. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside, congressional letterhead and words that made her sink into the nearest chair. They want me to testify, again, about the railroad investigations. Important. She scanned the pages. They're drafting new legislation, protection for tribal lands, oversight for railroad expansion. They want first-hand accounts from survivors. That's what they were. She realized. Survivors of a war most people never knew was fought. May bustled in from the kitchen, flower in her hair and purpose in her stride. Eleanor Hart, you tell that Cal to bring those children in for... She stopped, seeing their faces. What now? Eleanor explained. May listened, then nodded firmly. Of course you'll go. Both of you. The ranch? Will survive 2 weeks without you. Lord knows I managed a restaurant alone for years. May's expression softened. This matters. Eleanor, what you say could protect families for generations. That evening, the community gathered for what had become a monthly tradition, a shared meal where everyone contributed something. The long tables groaned under dishes that told stories: Lakota fry bread next to German strudel, Mexican beans beside Irish stew. Reverend Pike, grayer now, but with eyes that sparkled with renewed faith, stood to offer not just grace, but news. The church in Cotton Ford, what's left of it, has voted to relocate here. He smiled at the surprised murmurs. Seems they prefer building community to maintaining monuments. Applause rippled through the gathering. Eleanor caught Hawk's eye. sharing silent amazement. The town that had once epitomized division was literally moving toward unity. Young Joseph Running Bear, who'd been one of the imprisoned men they'd helped free, stood next. "My family wishes to announce my sister Mary will marry Thomas Garrett next moon." More celebration. Thomas was Garrett Palmer's son, the land officer who'd found his courage late but used it well. The marriage would join families once separated by prejudice and presumption. "Speaking of marriages," May said with suspicious innocence, "certain people might be interested to know that Judge Morrison, the honest one from Cheyenne, will be visiting next week. Full authority to perform ceremonies, legal ones." Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks as knowing looks turned their way. She and Hawk had exchanged vows in the Lakota way, blessed by elders and witnessed by the prairie wind, but legal recognition. "May Collins," she started. "Don't May Collins me. 3 years you've been living as married." About time the law caught up with reality. Cal, now 15 and tall as a young cottonwood, grinned. "I'd like to see my sister properly married, both ways." Eleanor looked at Hawk, found him smiling, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. "If you wish," he said simply. A week later, they stood again by the river, the same spot where they'd first truly seen each other during the storm. Judge Morrison, a man who'd lost his own son to frontier violence and found purpose in preventing others' losses, spoke words of legal binding. But it was Pike's blessing that made Eleanor's eyes fill. "Love doesn't ask permission," he said. "It simply is, like rivers that will not be dammed, like grass that grows through rock. What we witness today isn't the beginning of something, it's the recognition of what has always been." May stood as witness, tears streaming unashamedly. Cal presented the ring's simple silver bands he'd helped forge with the blacksmith who'd once refused Eleanor's service. The same man now stood among the witnesses, one more heart changed by proximity to truth. "By the authority vested in me by the territory of Dakota," Judge Morrison intoned, "I pronounce you husband and wife in the eyes of the law." "About time the law opened its eyes," someone muttered, sparking laughter. That night, the celebration merged cultures like streams joining, Lakota drums and Irish fiddles, square dancing and traditional steps, creating something new from honored pieces of the past. Eleanor found a quiet moment with Cal, who was taking a break from dancing with Mary Running Bear. "Pa would be proud," he said softly. "Of you, most of all." Eleanor replied, "You've become the man he hoped you'd be. Learned from the best." Cal's eyes found Hawk across the crowd, teaching a complicated step to delighted children. "Both of you." The trip to Washington proved more challenging than any prairie storm. Eleanor had testified before, but always in frontier courtrooms where the crimes were immediate and personal. This was different marble halls and political calculations, men in expensive suits deciding the fate of people they'd never meet. Mrs. Hart, or should I say Mrs. Yellowhawk. The senator's tone dripped condescension. "Hart is fine," Eleanor replied evenly. She'd kept Henry's name professionally. Adding Hawk's in private life, another bridge between worlds. "Tell us again why we should believe your unique perspective on frontier relations." Eleanor straightened, finding her voice as she had that long-ago Sunday in Cotton Ford. But now she spoke not from desperation, but authority. "Because I've lived it. Senator, I've seen what happens when greed wears a badge. I've watched good people disappear for asking questions. I've also seen enemies become neighbors, prejudice overcome by proximity, communities built on respect rather than dominance." She spoke for 2 hours, answering hostile questions with patient truth. Hawk waited in the gallery. Native Americans couldn't testify before Congress, another injustice to address, but his presence gave her strength. When she finished, the committee sat silent. Then Senator Walsh from Montana, a man who'd seen his own share of frontier reality, spoke. "Mrs. Hart, what would you have us do, practically speaking?" Eleanor had prepared for this. 3 things. First, require federal oversight of all railroad land acquisitions. Second, recognize tribal sovereignty in real terms, their laws on their lands. Third, investigate every Indian uprising of the past decade. You'll find half were manufactured to justify land grabs. Bold claims require bold proof. Eleanor placed a thick folder on the table. 700 pages of evidence, senator, names, dates, financial records, all verified by federal marshals. The committee exchanged glances. She'd given them enough rope to hang half the railroad lobby if they had the courage to use it. The journey home took 2 weeks, delayed by early winter storms. They returned to find the ranch transformed by season, everything blanketed in white, smoke rising from multiple chimneys as the expanded community hunkered down together. Eleanor, Mary Garrett, now Mary Running Bear Garrett, rushed to greet them. "Thank God you're back. May's been holding them off, but them. Railroad men, new ones. They arrived yesterday with papers, claiming mineral rights to the whole valley." Eleanor's blood chilled. Even after everything, the vultures circled. But when she entered the main house, she found May calmly serving coffee to 3 uncomfortable-looking men in city suits. "Ah, Eleanor. These gentlemen were just explaining how they own the mineral rights to land that's been properly deeded for 3 years. May's smile could have frozen the Cheyenne. "I was about to explain how we deal with claim jumpers in these parts." "Now, ma'am," the lead man blustered, "we have legal documents." "Forged, most likely." Eleanor interrupted. She recognized the type smooth talkers who counted on isolation and ignorance. "Let me guess. You filed these claims last month in some distant office, hoping we wouldn't hear about it until spring." The men exchanged glances, too accurate for comfort. "Here's what will happen," Eleanor continued. "You'll leave. Today. Because tomorrow. I'll telegraph Senator Walsh directly. Yes, we have his direct line, and inform him that railroad interests are already violating the oversight provisions being debated." You can't prove—" "I don't have to." Eleanor smiled coldly. "I just have to raise questions. In Washington, I'm now known as the woman who exposed the Kettering conspiracy. Do you want to be the next names in headlines?" They left within the hour, but not before one muttered, "This isn't over." "No," Hawk agreed quietly, watching them go. "It never is." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She walked to the spot where they'd placed a marker for all those lost to frontier greed: Henry, Albert Collins, Hawk's sister, countless others. The wooden cross stood stark against star-bright snow. "We won," she whispered to the night. "So why does it feel like we're still fighting?" "Because we are." Hawk joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. "But look what we defend now." He was right. Lamplight spilled from a dozen windows, families who'd found safety here. Children who'd grow up seeing difference as strength. A community that proved coexistence possible. "Worth it?" he asked. "Every scar," she confirmed. As winter deepened, their small victory became something larger. Word spread of a place where Indians and whites lived as neighbors, where law served justice rather than power, where a woman's word carried weight equal to any man's. Families arrived seeking that promise, some running from persecution, others simply tired of hatred. Not all stayed. The life was hard, the work constant, the need for vigilance unending. But those who remained built something precious. When spring came, it revealed new growth in more than crops. The school expanded. The church added space for multiple faiths to worship. Young couples married across old boundaries, creating families that embodied hope. "Never thought I'd see it," May confessed one evening, watching mixed groups of children play in the lengthening daylight. "Thought hate was too deep, fear too strong." "Fear is strong," Eleanor agreed. "But love is patient. It finds a way." They stood together, 2 widows who'd found purpose in their pain, watching the community they'd helped nurture flourish like prairie grass after fire. Cal rode up, no longer a boy but a young man with plans to study law. Someone needs to make sure the papers mean what they say, he'd declared. Beside him rode Mary's brother Joseph, the two planning another scouting expedition for the Territorial Survey, one that would map resources honestly, protecting rather than exploiting. "Aunt May Ellie," Cal called. "Riders coming. Friendly, they're waving a white flag." The riders proved to be journalists from Harper's Weekly, come to document the experiment in integration they'd heard about. Eleanor nearly laughed at the term. Experiment. This was life, messy and magnificent. "You'll find no experiment here," she told them firmly. "Just people choosing neighbors over strangers, cooperation over conflict. If that's remarkable, perhaps the question is why." They stayed 3 days, interviewing everyone willing to talk. When they left, the younger journalist lingered. "Mrs. Hart, what you've built here, it gives hope that maybe the whole country could heal its divisions." Eleanor thought of the long road from that dusty day when bandits took everything, through fire and storm and bridge battles, to this morning of possibility. "Healing happens," she said carefully, "when we stop seeing others as threats and start seeing them as teachers, when we realize our stories are all part of one story." As the journalists departed, Hawk found her in the garden. She'd started vegetables and herbs, but also prairie flowers transplanted with care. Regrets, their old question, asked now with gentle humor. Eleanor looked at their life complicated, sometimes dangerous, always worthwhile. At the man who'd taught her strength could be quiet and love could be revolutionary. At the community that proved divisions were choices, not destinies. "Only one," she said. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "That it took tragedy to bring us together, that so many suffered for us to learn what should be simple, that we're all human, all deserving of dignity and justice." Hawk pulled her close. "Then we honor them by living better, by teaching others what we've learned." "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "We do." As sunset painted the prairie in shades of gold and purple, the sounds of community rose around them: laughter, conversation in multiple languages, children called to supper, the eternal rhythm of lives intertwined. Somewhere out there, forces of greed and division still plotted, but here, in this small corner of the Dakota Territory, a different future was being written one day at a time. "Justice doesn't roar like thunder," Eleanor murmured, remembering words spoken long ago. "It grows like grass after rain." And in the growing darkness, with stars emerging like promises overhead, that grass whispered its quiet triumph, roots deep, growth steady, hope undeniable. The prairie had tested them with storm and fire. They'd answered with something stronger than either: a love that built bridges where others saw only divisions, a courage that chose connection over comfort, and a faith that tomorrow could be better than yesterday if brave hearts were willing to build it. This was their answer to hatred. This was their gift to the future. And it was only the beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about Eleanor and Hawk's journey. If you enjoyed this tale from the Old West, please subscribe to my channel Wild West Night. Give this video a like and hit the hype button to help more people discover these stories of love, courage, and justice on the frontier.